Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting.
What really changed my perspective is, I have two jobs now. I really had a few as a dad and a husband, but from the work perspective, I have to work. I need to make a living, and I had to work through all this. But now my other job is cancer, and I started treating it just like my job.
Cue music. Places, everybody places. We're starting in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Autoimmune Hour, where we look at the rise of autoimmune disorders. I've brought together top experts that range from doctors, specialists, nutritionists, researchers, and even those recovering from autoimmune to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information about autoimmunity and how to live your life uninterrupted.
Thank you for joining us here on the Autoimmune Hour with Sharon Sayler. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any other recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio. Join the Autoimmune Hour's Courage Club. Sign up now at understandingautoimmune.com. Now, back to your host, Sharon Sayler.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com and, of course, UnderstandingAutoimmune.com, where you can find over 460 plus and counting episodes. And I'm so excited to be here again. We've got an amazing person, another survivor to thriver story. You know how we love those here in the Courage Club community, because those are the people that have been through it and walked through it, and they're coming back the other side and saying, hey, maybe if you're just in the beginning of your thriving, these are a few things to pay attention to or a few things to know. And I just love those people that are willing to walk the path with you. And tonight we have Bill C. Potts. I'm going to read his bio to you because it's amazing. He is a 5-time cancer survivor with cancer number 6 efforts currently underway. And you would never know. I've been talking to him for 20 minutes before we started the show, and we should have recorded all of that because it was just amazing. Bill has had a successful business career and an Ironman athlete, and he's a dedicated father of 3, including twin girls. And he's celebrated 32 years of marriage in the Bahamas with his remarkable wife, Kim, and they live in St. Petersburg, Florida right now. And his cancer journey has spanned 22 years as his lymphoma is incurable and keeps coming back. And through this journey, he accidentally became one of the world's most experts on cancer from the patient perspective. And you know what? We were talking about that. And I feel that way about autoimmune. I'm not sure that's a badge I want to wear, but being an informed patient, an informed person with something, I'm not even sure I like the word patient, Bill, and I'll talk about that. But anyway, let me show you his book. If you're on video on YouTube, here's the cover of his book. It's called Up for the Fight, How to Advocate for Yourself as You Battle Cancer from a 5-Time Survivor. It's a great book. And what I love about it is, yes, his perspective is cancer, but I'm telling you, you maybe can see all my little markies here if you're on YouTube. It's a great book because through the whole thing, I'm going, that's not just about cancer. That's about anything that you're needing in healthcare. So I love it. Welcome, Bill. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, Sharon, thank you for having me on it.
Now, just in a little brief history, I know I read your bio there, but just tell us a little bit about it from your perspective, what it is to be someone who has beat cancer 5 times.
Yeah, even hearing that number and said out loud is interesting for me, because being a 5-time cancer survivor, and next week I start tackling number 6, it's pretty powerful. It has changed my life in so many ways. You know, never would have expected this journey to happen. When I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in 2002, I thought it was going to be one and done. A year later, that same group told me that my cancer had come back, and this is after I had gone through radiation ablation treatment, taking iodine 131, which is the same radioactive material that came out of Chernobyl when it melted down. So it can't be good for you. Though it did handle the thyroid cancer, but a year later they called me in. This was Christmas Eve, and they called me in. They're like, Bill, your cancer's back. You need to start treatment once the holidays are over. And at that point I thought, there's no way my cancer's back. because I don't have a thyroid to have cancer. At that point, I went and got a second opinion, and that's when my entire cancer journey got flipped on its head, and I decided to own my own journey versus anybody else. So I go to MD Anderson. They tell me that no, your thyroid cancer is not back, and we're not sure you should have been blasted with that much radiation anyway. But we're sure thankful you came, because if you've been blasted with another round of radiation, your life would be even very different. As it turns out, most likely in 2008, when I was diagnosed with stage 3 lymphoma, most likely that was a result of the radiation treatment. We'll never know for sure. But by then, I was really owning my journey. I was owning it. And so in 2008, stage 3 lymphoma, I have a kind that's incurable. They prescribed this pretty standard treatment for it, which is pretty ugly. And I told the team at MD Anderson, no what? I said, no, I'm not going to do this treatment. And they're like, why? You can see I've got for those that are on YouTube, I've got a big head of hair, and I was in sales at the time, and that treatment meant I was going to lose my hair. So I told them that. I said, I can't lose my hair. I'm in sales. I travel for a living, and I make my money selling, and I don't want to go into a meeting and them say, what's wrong with you? Because that shifts the conversation to me versus the customer. And if you're going to be in sales, you need the conversation to be about the customer. They're like, okay. They took it as a challenge. I almost missed my flight from Houston back here to St. Pete, and they prescribed to me. They said, Bill, there's a trial. You'll be patient number 23. You've never heard this word before. Remember, this is 2008.
Right.
It's called immunotherapy. I'm like, okay. Like, we think that this might work for this cancer. If we give you this immunotherapy drug, that it could teach your body how to kill the cancer and you won't lose your hair. I said, okay, what happens if it doesn't work? And they go, then you'll lose your hair. So it worked. And in 2008, I was one of the early benefactors of immunotherapy, which kept me in remission for almost 6 years. And the cancer came back.
I want to go tangential here for just a minute, because like you, I also took charge. And that is one of my big messages, is take charge of your health care. Where did you find that courage from? With the white coat authority I was raised with and everything, I've always been fascinated. Where did it come from for me to say no to certain treatments?
I think it came out of frustration. It also came out of fear, and it also just how I'm wired in life. Always been the go-getter, type A, take charge, set goals. And it just didn't pass the sniff test. And I'm like, wow, this is about money, not about me. I better find somebody that cares about me, not about the money. MD Anderson's the perfect place for that kind of situation. Same with Mayo, where I am now. And it's about the patient first. And so I just needed to put myself in that position and find the right team to do it. And I'm thankful I did, because I am 100% confident that if I hadn't got a second opinion in 2002, and now we're bumping into 2003, I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you. I would have been blasted with ridiculous levels of radiation.
You said something that was fascinating to me. Is about taking charge of your own health care. And that's what the book is about, by the way. That's why I say it works for whether you have cancer or autoimmune or anything else. One of the things that I was nodding my head through the whole book, but there's one place that I want to start with. And a lot of the book, by the way, is about communicating. And I know Bill mentioned about a team, and definitely want to encourage all of you listening. Make sure that you have a team that A, listens to you, and B, talks to each other. That was critical when I finally found a team, and now my team's up to 5 people, 5 medical professionals. They are all willing to talk to each other to make sure that everything is combined, that play well, that they all play well together, okay? to have a healthy outcome. I do want to backtrack and go tangential here. My audience, Bill, knows I go tangential all the time. I run down rabbit holes. I'm going to just read this out of the book. Pause and then be deliberate as to who you share the news with. Wow. I just nodded my head along. What's your story behind that wise advice?
It is great advice, and thankfully I listened to myself and followed it. But when you're given a diagnosis of any serious health issue, you have to take a big, deep breath so that you can get your own emotions in order. You know what it's like. You start having a hard time thinking. The stress of it is enormous. And so you need to harness your own emotions before you really tell too many people. Because what happens if you post it on social media, all of a sudden now you're having to comfort everybody else. And I saw this even in 2008 with the lymphoma when my neighbors knew and somebody would come over and I'd open the door and they would start crying. I'm like,
Mm.
now I'm comforting you. And seriously, I'm the one who's, trying not to die here. I should be crying, not you. And so if you post it on social media, it creates a monumental task of trying to manage other people's emotion while you're managing yours, let alone the fact that perhaps I don't want my work to know about it because it could affect my job. It could affect promotions. Certain people may have to know about it. In addition, that wide communication can impact your life in other ways. And you may start hearing from people you don't want to hear from. And yeah, if you post it on social media, it's real challenging.
I learned this before my autoimmune diagnosis, but when I got pregnant, it was like
Oh,
every
yeah.
had experienced a pregnancy or been near a pregnant person had comments about what to expect and the horrors of labor and all of those sorts of things. And in my mind, also besides social media, be careful who you share it with because you don't need that kind of stuff implanted in your
Mm,
brain. The worst case
mm.
outcome, all of the horror stories, you have to keep your mind clear of that there is a way and you'll find it instead of being bombarded by horror stories of
Oh, and plus the questions. Bill, I had one. What are your odds?
oh my gosh.
And I'm like, wait a second. Are you really asking me this question? I said, it's 100%. My odds are 100%. I'm like, think about it. Either live or I die. It's 100%. And I'm like, why would you ask that question? Are you going to beat it, Bill? I'm like, oh, Yeah, that's demeaning. You tell me I'm going to beat it or I'm going to beat it because of my positive attitude. False. It helps, but it isn't going to save me, right? So you're demeaning those that have a negative attitude. And we all go through ups and downs, through our healthcare journey of sadness and depression. And cancer, one of the most common things is they prescribe you antidepressants. Why? Because it's sad. It's hard to go through it. And those kind of questions drive me crazy because it's not very thoughtful. Or, Bill, let me tell you about my friend who went through cancer treatment. Or, Bill, have you tried this place in Mexico that does this certain thing? Or have you tried drinking this juice? I'm like, stop. It's my journey. I own it. I will listen to constructive comments, but those aren't constructive. Those are almost a little bit selfish. So yeah, that's why I limit who I reach out to. And in particular cases, like with my prostate stuff, seriously, does a guy want to advertise to everybody that he's got prostate cancer? He's having prostate surgery next week. I am because of the book, but that wouldn't be my pick without the book.
And on my perspective, I'd love to know your perspective. I got to the point when I started the show that I was okay with who I was and all of
Yeah.
the information coming my way. It had happened so much that
Hmm.
pretty soon it was just my filters learned to block it out and
Yeah.
thought
Same.
the message I'm learning of what the path is, and if I can help someone, and I know your book does that, and you're just amazing in that. If I can help someone who is not as far along the path as I
Mm.
am, realize that there is hope and help on the other side as you're going through this journey. You don't have to walk it alone. Once you get to that place of over the grief and the sadness of the diagnosis and the shock, and your family gets to a centered place, sharing with people who are newer on the path, I
Mm.
think for me, became a critical part of my motivation to continue to thrive and continue to seek out new ways to improve my health.
Yeah, that's really well said in so many different areas. And You know, I I don't know how you are with your show, but there's times where I just don't wanna talk about my journey, and then
Oh, absolutely.
I get reminded, and I got reminded, again yesterday, where somebody tells me that, "Hey, I gave this book to a friend, and they had given up their fight, and they read your book, and now they're fighting again, and so thank you for that." And it reminds me that, okay, this is not the path I chose, but this is now my purpose, like you, is to communicate with others going through the journey to help them through it, and it's become my purpose in life, and who would have guessed, right? I kept it a secret for so long, even from my work, and then I got to a point where they're piling up, 2, 3, 4, 5, that all of a sudden the pastor at Mayo tells me to write a book, and boom, it's not a secret anymore, and I found that to be hard, but like you, rewarding in ways that are hard to describe. The impact that you have with the reach that you have, Sharon, the change that you make, you have no idea, but how big it is, but it's big. And what greater purpose in life is there to help somebody else? And you're doing it by the thousands and tens of thousands. And that's why I'm so glad to be on your show.
I love your book. I want everybody, I'm going to say, Up for the Fight, is it? And Bill Potts, because you have to get the book. And thank you, Bill. That's important to me because there are times that I have thought, what am I doing? We're going to our 8th year of doing this, 460 plus episodes. That's a lot. And there are times where I thought, oh, this is work. This is really, and I'll get an email from someone asking a question. Can you direct me to the, so-and-so or whatever? One of my favorite emails came from a woman in Australia. And while it wasn't directly related to autoimmune, it's called PANDA. And it's the strep virus going into the brain. And I had no idea what it was. So it's not technically an autoimmune, but they said they were trying to reach Beth Mahoney, the author of the wonderful book, Saving Sammy. It's a story of her fight for her son's life with this disease. And when I got that email and she said she was reaching out to me to see if I could help, and I was able to help. And then I went, okay, from the universe, you go, okay, I get it. I'm still up for the fight. I'm still going to be fighting the fight when you realize that you have been able, that there is a purpose and a meaning to it all. And I don't want to get like mamby-pamby about this idea of silver lining and gift. I don't really look at it in any of that, but it does become a mission. I don't want to start thinking like, oh, I don't think it's helpful to think about, oh, you got this for a reason. No, I don't think that's the case. But once I have it and I'm here, let's make some purpose out of it is how I go about it. So one of the other ones that I wanted to talk about too is, if you've not planned to get a second opinion, please consider getting one. And I would like to strike out the word consider.
Yeah, you can strike out the word please too. Just do it. Your life depends on it. It's not something that you want to ponder. It's something that you want to do. And the second opinions has been, obviously, it saved my life and it saves a lot of lives. And it's where you get that second opinion that becomes pretty important too. And picking your healthcare team is so critical. And like you said, you need a team that communicates amongst each other. You need a team that communicates with you. You need a team that is open to pushback. You need a team that is easily accessible whenever you need them. You need a team that has experience in your particular type of cancer. For example, there's 61 different types of lymphoma. I was seeing the doctor at MD Anderson pre-pandemic, and I couldn't go there during the pandemic because of my immune system, but I had to go to Mayo in Florida. But he saw more patients with my particular type of lymphoma than anybody in the world. I'm like, okay, that's good. But that doesn't mean I still don't get a second opinion, right? And because you've got to balance that off. And now I've got Mayo and I've got MD Anderson, but I've got a lot of places I could go. And you really have to do your homework as to not just the first opinion, but the second opinion. It's hard to do that. It's a ton of work, but you have to do it.
And educate yourself too. And the internet, it has the pros and cons, and stay away from all the scary ones, guys. There's amazing places that you can go get real research. You can get real peer-reviewed papers on different items that you're wanting to know about. Those are the ones to read and understand and ask questions about. And all the others, the chat rooms, whatever, stay away from those. You want quality information so you can make a quality decision because it's your life.
So true. And I think what changed, back to the thyroid cancer piece, when I started owning my journey, what really changed my perspective is, I have 2 jobs now. I really had a few. I was a dad and a husband, but as from the work perspective, I have to work. I need to make a living, and I had to work through all this. But now my other job is cancer, and I started treating it just like my job. To-do lists, things to check on, follow-up, research, just like I did in my business career, I was now doing in my health career, and thankfully, so far, so good.
That's a great segue to another one of your amazing moments in the book that I marked, is you can make your decisions easier for your family by officially documenting them early in your cancer journey. Now, I wanted to add a few ands to this, yes, ands to that. The one thing I wished, and I didn't do it right away, did it probably 2 years into my journey, was documenting many things, like the different symptoms I was going through and what helped and what didn't help.
Mm,
Because the thing I found that for me, and maybe it's just me, as I was going through and I would be getting much better, the symptoms would be alleviated and things would be going along swimmingly. And then somehow my little subconscious little creature on my shoulder whispered in my ear, "Oh, you can just cheat this one time. You can have
mm,
whatever it was." And then I would forget what was I doing that was helping me so far beautifully along the journey. And then I fell a little bit backwards, took
mm,
a couple steps backwards. And so I like to document quite a bit of my journey, who I've seen, what their recommendations were, why I made that choice to do it or not do it. Because I thought I would remember, but it's like when I thought I would remember every event in my children's lives. Yeah, no.
mm, That's true. That's a great point you make is journaling it all and continue to journal it, not just while you're going through treatment, but even afterwards, so you can figure out what works and doesn't work. And look, I'm a slow learner, Sharon. I've been going through this for now 22 years, and I get better as I go. But I could say early on, I wasn't that great at this. I manage my own journey, but I do it a lot better now than I did then, and I'm lucky enough that I can live long enough to learn from, on my previous mistakes. My wife jokes about it, but it took me like 4 cancers before I really got dialed into the importance of of diet. I was always good on the exercise, and I was good on all those things, but she's like, "Wow, what took you so long?" I'm like, "I know, slow learner," but now I'm so dialed in on the importance of other things like diet and grounding and massage and meditation and all those kind of things that I didn't do early on because I just didn't do it, and I was just too busy in my own mind doing other things to pay attention. Yeah, I got this beat. Yeah, it'll come back, but whatever. Let's keep on living, and now I live each day deliberately, trying to do the best I can to feel better, but also the best I can to help maximize the amount of time that I can live before my lymphoma comes back, and I am a full believer that I can do things that can impact that by all those things I just talked about.
I love what you said about living deliberately. I too try to live deliberately, and I want to see if you have any tips or tricks for me because, like I said, I do really good for a while, and then the little evil twin on my shoulder pops out and says, "Oh, just this once." And just this once then turns into more than once. What are some tips and tricks you've learned about living deliberately? I think that's critically important to maintaining your health.
Yeah, I think it's just for me, and you can probably teach me a lot more than I can share with you. But for me, it was just on how I prioritize priorities. And once I set as a top priority, period, every day when I wake up, I think about it is to maximize my health. Then it becomes pretty easy. I've always been very disciplined. Obviously, to do an Ironman race, you got to be super disciplined. So I'm good on all that. But it's just a matter of priority. I have to do it. But the second piece, and this is the real this is the secret sauce on and how I do it, is that every day when I wake up, I remind myself why I need to have that as a priority. I'm like, "Oh, why? Why? Because I'd like to walk my daughters down the aisle at a wedding. I would like to travel with my wife now that I'm getting older and not working as much. I would like to spend time with my neighbors. And I'd like to get this book into as many hands as I can, and if I don't prioritize the health piece, the battle piece, and what I can do to stay as healthy as I can, then I won't be able to do the other things, and those whys, then it makes it easy for me. Look, I'm not perfect and we make mistakes, but generally, I am very disciplined in all those things.
I think it's important for us to figure out our whys. One of
Mm,
the drivers for me when I started the show was one of the first experts I went and saw really was one of those you do it my way or the highway.
mm,
And their way just from instinct or my gut going, I don't, this just doesn't sound right, Sharon. This doesn't sound right. It took me a while to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to go that way. And so setting those, knowing that things about yourself and what you're willing to do and not do, I think is critically important because I started the show out of frustration.
mm,
And frustration of, wow, my day job is in communications and with all of my problems getting this person to listen, oh my goodness, what are people who don't have my skill set going through if they can't
Mm.
get through it? So I think that's critically important to understand those. And we had Pamela Sylvan on the other day, and she, I love her little tip, and it may not work for you guys. If you're visually oriented, it may work for you. But she has a little chart that she keeps up in her vision area in her bathroom. She has this little chart that, she's going to see it every day. And she puts little check marks by it. And I told her recently, I went out and bought gold stars. I'm a gold star
Mm.
girl. And so
Mm.
I put little gold stars on those things to remind me of those. I know someone as dedicated as yourself probably doesn't need a checklist, but then some of us who have that little cheat factor, try a checklist, see if that helps.
Well, yeah, a couple things too to add to that is that I've learned to give myself grace if I do things that are off what I think I should be doing, and because it just happens, or you deliberately make a decision, and I'm on vacation and I'm going to eat not like I normally eat. I'm on vacation. That's cool. But I also think that one reason that I can be pretty deliberate is that I've had to really deal with the dying piece before, one time in 2008 in particular, and then another time in 2021. And it's changed. It's like all of a sudden I was colorblind, and then I put on those glasses that you see on TikTok and YouTube where all of a sudden the colorblind people can see the colors and they go, wow. And that is how I see life now, and I didn't see it that way before, and I'm just so in love with living that those choices become easier because I wanna continue to experience that, and it's remarkable what I see and what I hear that I missed before, and it makes life so much more vibrant when it's really, quote, "in color," that I don't wanna miss it.
Mm, that's beautiful. Wow. And speaking of not missing things, I blew past my time to get on for our quick commercial break, guys. So we'll be right back with more from Bill Potts and his wonderful book, Up for the Fight. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
The Autoimmune Hour will return after these messages from our sponsors. It's great sponsors like these that keep this show coming to you every week. Be sure and stop by understandingautoimmune.com to learn more.
Om Times TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler, and I'm from understandingautoimmune.com. You guys already know that. I'm not going to go into those details because I'm here with the awesome Bill C. Potts, and he's the author of the amazing book, Up for the Fight, How to Advocate for Yourself as You Battle Cancer from a 5-Time Survivor. Here's the copy. If you're on YouTube, you can see the picture of the cover. It's a great book. It's easy read, by the way. Look, easy read. I loved all the parts of it. So, Bill, I've just been awestruck by your book and having you here on the show telling us in greater detail about the items in the book. And one of the ones that I was reading, it's towards the end, and it struck me as interesting because I recently had this happen, and it's wait to review the results with your care team. Now, my little story behind that was now that they have online like charting things and you can log in and find your different lab results and things like that. what was fascinating to me is I got some lab results I didn't understand. And I didn't understand the lab workers' notes. And part of them, if you read them one way, were scary. And in
Mm,
another way, you didn't know how
mm,
to take it. I'm thinking, this is not such a good idea that I have instant access to somebody that I don't have someone to help interpret them.
mm.
So I read that. I go, I wonder if Bill had that issue too, where he went online and saw his results and nobody there to tell him what it meant.
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way a few times because you're always curious as to what does it say, and you would think I, who's been through this so many times, can read these pretty well, and I can understand most of what's said, but not always. And so I still try to follow the mantra, just wait. Okay. Now, a complete blood count test, I can read that stuff, but when it comes to scans and what's the radiologist mean when he says that, I just wait. I just wait to the appointment, and luckily those appointments for me aren't very long. I don't have to wait a week or two for the results. It's usually that day or the next day I get the results. I should just wait. I'll go sit down and let him tell me. Remission, not remission, worry, no worry. We're good.
I agree, because needless worry doesn't help us to maintain our health for sure.
Oh, so
Needless
true.
stress does not help us maintain. That's right. So that was fascinating to me. Was so many times that I've gotten those and just like, okay, I wish I hadn't. It's that part of me, it's, oh, I wonder how it is, and then I think I know, and then I don't know. So that's so true. Let me open it up. I feel like tarot cards or something here because I just have all these little things, and it's like, where am I opening up now? And
Right.
this one I love too. The beauty of the buddy system is that the role of the buddy does not always need to be filled by the same person. And I love that because that is one of the lessons that I learned early on, that it is really, in my mind, and I know you go into it in the detail, but I'd love to hear your thoughts of it. It's not fair to anyone, including your spouse, your loved one, whatever, whomever, to feel that they are burdened not only with their own grief, but having to manage your health and your grief and emotions and all of that through that. And I think that's the beauty, is understanding that there are people that are really great in certain roles. And if they're willing to step up for that particular part of the role, that awesome. But no need to have one person be the 100%. It's just impossible.
Nothing to add to that. That was beautifully said. And I do think, as you talk about the challenge of a spouse or best friend that's helping you go through the cancer journey, is that as the patient, you have to really keep an eye on them too, to make sure that they get the support and the help that they need. I look at my wife and what she's been through, and she hasn't been able to be at all my appointments because I was traveling to Houston for them for years, and we had young kids, so I had other buddies, which actually turned out to be accidentally really beneficial, so she could be a little bit distant and not see all the stuff I was going through. But I've had to keep a constant eye on her, make sure she has her own interests and she has her friends that she's doing things with, and that she's not too focused on me. Same with the kids. Yeah, I got these kids. They only know me. Literally only remember me as going through the battle. Right? They were little when this thing started, and watching them grow up to be adults through this journey. My wife and I both have to make sure that they're okay through it, because they're not necessarily going to tell you, but they might show you, and they might talk with you and tell you what they're feeling. But lining up support for the buddies and, in my case, the wife and the kids, has been pretty critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I learned, especially when your friends are willing to help, I have great
Mm,
friends network, but I have a couple of kinds of friends. I have the friends that will say, "Oh, you look great in that," regardless, even if I don't look great in that. And then I have friends that say, "Yeah, no, you don't look good in that."
mm,
Right? So
mm,
those are my two kinds of friends.
mm.
Now, knowing that about my friends, I love them both because sometimes I want to know, and other times I just want to be told you look great, and that's fine. However, I choose those friends that, like, where do they fit in my wellness journey? Do I want the
Mm,
one that's just going to tell me the blunt truth from a different perspective, from the observer role? Or do I just need someone who's there to hold my hand and, stroke my hair and make me feel better? It's like,
mm,
I love that when you said they don't always have to be the same person, because I was thinking about, yes, they don't. And it's not just from like their skill set of maybe one's a nurse or something like that.
mhm,
It's from like, how do they tell you their truth? You
mm,
know?
mm.
Because
True.
you don't know that about your friends. And I have both and I love them both. but I
Mm,
know where they fit. Sometimes you want it sugar coated, and other times it's not helpful to be sugar coated. So
yeah, for
knowing
sure.
where people fit in your life is important.
For sure.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, the things you've been mentioning is traveling. And I know here's total tangential. I already told Bill to fasten his seatbelt before we started, everybody. Um, One of the things you've been mentioning a lot is all the traveling you did to find your resources. Now, I was lucky enough to be able to travel to find a lot of my resources too. Although I found it really difficult to travel even before the pandemic. I know this is just tangential on a side note, but it came into my mind. Do you have tips on how to travel? I know, especially since the pandemic, it's changed, but do you have tips on how to travel when you're not feeling 100%?
Yeah, for sure. This has been one of my greatest challenges is trying to get through not just COVID, but the flu and RSV and colds, which, could really take me down. And obviously I made the choice not to fly to Houston because that was just too much with no immune system. So I found a place that I could drive. And my immune system was so beat up, I even had to find, where was I going to go to the bathroom on this 4 hour drive because I couldn't go into a gas station. You just find those rest areas with the big open areas. You have to make so many decisions, literally hundreds of decisions when you're traveling, and I had to be perfect. I couldn't make a mistake. And so that put a lot of stress on things, but it also made me pretty dialed in on how to travel. So if I was there's this mask from 3M called the 1870 plus, and I've got this mask from other cancer patients that told me to use it because it's that one mask that gives you basically great protection. They wear it in the ICUs and the COVID units, but you can wear it for 6, 7, 8 hours and you don't feel like you have to take it off because it's so tight or whatever. It is tight, but you have plenty of breathing rooms. When I travel, even still to Bahamas last week, eating at restaurants outside. If I'm around a crowded space, I'm wearing a mask. That 1870 plus is going to, I'll wear that on the flight because that's going to guarantee that I'm not going to get anything, almost guarantee on the flight. And I might wear another mask. I use a Curad mask that's also really good. That's a little bit more comfortable when I'm in spaces. But I basically have adapted my entire life to minimize being around crowds, and it's actually been great. Yeah, I live in St. Petersburg, Florida, so I can eat outside most of the year, 11 months of the year. When I travel, we look at which flights aren't going to be that crowded. When I went to the Bahamas, I was on a flight, maximum capacity was 42. There's only half the people on the plane, so it wasn't that crowded. Travel times a day, travel days that aren't going to be as busy, and just be deliberate and wearing the mask when you're around people. And I was really lucky, and it worked. And in addition, making sure the people around you are healthy. And this gets a little tangential too, but keeping sick people out of the house, which for me during COVID and the last 2.5 years has been the plumber, the AC person. I just make sure I'm not home. And my wife handles it. We installed this system called the Remy Halo system, which they use in hospitals, which we put onto our AC unit in our house so that it kills any of the stuff that's flying around in the air. So we went to great extremes to prevent me from getting sick. And it wasn't until a little over a year ago I made one mistake, went to somebody's house. We had it all prearranged and, that everything was going to be good. Then somebody came over that didn't expect, and I got sick. And by then I'd already had it worked out with everybody. What would happen if I got COVID? What would I take? Where would I go? What would I do? And so we executed that plan. And 21 days later, I emerged, and here I am.
I agree. It's not easy. And even with autoimmune, I know it's not the same as going through cancer treatments. However, the immune suppressant drugs are the same.
Yeah, they are.
And one of the things that it's a weird feeling after the coming out the other side of this last 3 years was in an odd way. A majority of my friends now know what I go through for the last 8 years. They would say things like, "Oh my gosh, I hate doing this and I hate doing that. Oh my gosh, I have to be so careful here." And I would just jokingly say, "Welcome to my world." I felt much more prepared personally when all of the things started going crazy a couple of 3 years ago. I felt much more personally prepared for the whole ordeal than the majority of my friends because they'd had no clue what it was like to be mindful of all of that.
Yeah, the last few years have really normalized, wearing masks and being careful. And I don't really use the cancer card hardly ever, but the immunocompromised card, I do. And so if I go to a restaurant and there's no outdoor seating available, I'm like, look, I need to be outside. Usually I do this ahead of time, but if I'm there, I'm like, look, I'm immunocompromised. I prefer not to be inside the restaurant. Can you help me out? This happened once. We were on vacation, and they're like, no problem. We'll create a table for you outside. They literally take a table from inside, move it to outside. And I'm like, thank you. So I don't know how you find it, but people are super respectful almost every time when I say, hey, I need some help because I'm immunocompromised and can't be around big crowds of people. That's been good. And now I have nobody ever ask me or push back or question why I have a mask on if I'm in a group of people. I don't hear that anymore. Early on, a little bit, but now not so much.
Yeah. As I mentioned before, I'm not really so much about finding gifts or the silver lining types of things per se, but I have to say, yes, it's nice not to have to explain anymore. Most people
Mhm.
just they don't even really care. Okay, fine. That person's wearing a mask. That's just how it is. And I find that in a way that was rather nice not to have to explain anything for a change.
The first time I got on a plane was only like 6 months ago. And, this journey started in 2020. So it'd been a while. And somebody said, hey, are you scared to get on the plane? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm petrified. And okay. I'm like, but I'm going to do it because it's important that we go on this trip. And I said, but no, I'm anything but relaxed. And I'm still not when I get on an airplane or get into a bus or whatever. I don't know how you are, but I have not normalized relaxing when I'm around crowded spaces.
I agree. And the more that I've learned, and we've had Sarah Payton on and a variety of other experts on our neurobiology, the more I've learned that I can have heightened awareness of my surroundings and still tell myself, be calm, you're okay,
Hmm.
know what to do. And I talk myself through it sometimes because I have learned through all these shows and personal experience that if I allow myself to heighten that fight, flight, or freeze mechanism, that compromises my immune system as well.
Hmm.
And oftentimes have my own checklists and things like that of if I'm flying or whatever I'm doing, and being able to go in it going, okay, you're prepared, you've been there before. And sometimes I do have to talk to myself. You're safe, you're okay. Trust your gut. If you're feeling like it's not safe, trust your gut, extricate yourself from that area or do your best to minimize whatever's going on around you. But
Yeah,
paying attention to that little gut, that little autonomic nervous system of yours.
that is well said. And I have a lot of those conversations with myself. And I'm sure you're the same way, but I could literally go into a room of 100 people and within a minute, I know who's sick and who's not and who's coughing and who's not. My wife's, there's no way. And I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, I know. I know. It was a repair person came over the other day. I opened the door, a brand new washing machine broke, and opened the door. And I'm like, how are you? And he starts to talk. And I walked right out the back door and I said, Kim, he's sick. He goes, are you sure? I'm like, 100%. I said, I'll be outside. She's like, wow, it's true. With one, he said hello and I knew.
yeah. Trust your gut.
Yeah. Yeah. So good insight.
And so many people, in a way, they're like, oh, Sharon, I couldn't just walk out the back door. You know what? Yes, you can. It's much more
Mhm.
important that you maintain your health and your wellness than the niceties of whether your wife takes care of the washing machine or whether you do. It's much more important.
Yeah, it's true, and that's a hard one. The social pressures of mask wearing, of being around crowds, it can be challenging at times to push yourself to say it's okay to be the way I am.
At Christmas time, we had a couple of wonderful guests on the show, and we were talking about boundaries. And one of the shows was about food-related boundaries, and the well-meaning person is, "Oh, you could just have a little gluten." And they obviously don't understand gluten. There's no such thing as a little gluten.
Mhm.
But this is all about understanding our boundaries, guys. It's important, and knows you like you, even your loved ones. They can try and understand what you're going through and empathize, and that they've seen you at your worst and they feel it, but nobody knows you like you. So I'm a big advocate of saying, hey, look, that may work, I've said this to doctors, by the way. I'm sure that works for a lot of people, but that's not going to work for me. Let's find something different. Now, I think you said something like that earlier in the show, so I'm just reaffirming it, putting an exclamation point by it. And we're down to just the last couple of minutes, and I want to just this one really I highlighted. Recognize that your presence may mean more than anything eloquent than you could try to say or do. I just love that. And that's a nice place to finish it here is recognize that your presence may mean more than anything eloquent you can try to say or do. I think that's really cool. What were your thoughts when you wrote that?
I learned that really from my kids. People don't know what to say. In many cases, when they come to see you, they don't know what to do. And one night, my son was in town from Boston, and we're sitting on the couch, and I'm like, I know you got tons of friends in town. Are you gonna go see them? He goes, no, I'd rather just sit here with you. And there's times when I was so beat up from the chemo that the best thing to say was nothing. Just sit there with me. And if you're gonna then speak, let's talk about anything but what I was going through. Let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or let's talk about something different, or tell me what's going on with you. And the silence many times was kind of the salve that helped heal the wound, just because they were with me. And remember, you've been through it too with some of these drugs. I had the chemo brain. I just wasn't in a good spot, but I just wanted to be near people that love me, and that's all I had to do. Just sit there. It was magical. And the reason I put that in the book is I want others people to think of that when they go visit somebody that's having health issues. You don't have to say anything. And for sure, if you're going to say something, maybe don't make it about their health.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really critical. And you had mentioned earlier about giving yourself grace. And if you are the person coming to visit, or the spouse or the child, whatever it is, learning to give yourself grace and giving the person you're with the space just to be. I have a friend who is autistic, and this is where I learned the power of silence. Well, oftentimes they say to me, we'd just be reading together, reading in the same room, different books. We'd just be in the same room together. And he said to me several times, I just appreciate that you're just here. And I think it's that part about not being alone, but you're not in any position to be able to feel like you want to talk out loud or share out loud at that point in time. The silence can often be the most healing.
It's beautiful.
We're just down to the last 5 minutes or so. Bill, I want to give you time. I'm a fan of the book. It's called Up for the Fight, and Bill C. Potts, and I couldn't cover it all in our time together. What are some of your favorite parts that you'd like to share?
Well, I think the favorite part for me is the part I didn't write. There's a chapter in there from 2 of my 3 kids and my wife that kind of coaches friends and family of cancer patients, things that can help them help the patient. And I actually learned from reading their piece about how to deal with them better, but the insights from them can help anybody that knows somebody going through the battle. So that's one of my favorite parts, and not just with cancer, but any health journey. I do think the last chapter of mine, which is called Lagniappe, which is I went to Tulane for graduate school in New Orleans. That means basically a bonus. Some of the life lessons I've learned going through this journey are also really applicable. A piece that I didn't expect, Sharon, that came out of the book even before it was published, because I gave some drafts to some people that were going through the battle and didn't want to wait until it was printed to read it. The piece that I missed, and I don't know why I missed it, but I missed the piece that this book can give people hope. I hadn't thought about it. And then when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense, because the number 5 is pretty big. Hopefully in the next few weeks, number 6, we can cross that out and put that on there. But it just goes to show that if you own the journey and you treat it like your job to get better, and you get the second opinions, that there's hope that you can get through it. And that's been powerful for me to hear from others that have read the book that's their takeaway. And that's why being on your show to be able to share the message becomes so important. It's not about selling books. It's about communicating the message. Yes, the book can help patients. It can help the families of patients, the friends of patients. Yes, it can do that. But the bigger purpose is to help others going through the journey. And the book is the vehicle to do that, in podcasts like this as well. So that's why I'm so grateful to be on your show.
Thank you so much. Where can people find the book and find out more about you?
Yeah, the book's available wherever books are sold. Barnes & Noble, Amazon is the primary one that people are buying books. I've made it easy to find me. So billcpotts.com is a website where you can learn more about me, or you can email me. Your listeners can email me at bill@billcpotts.com. And I'm easily accessible for a reason, because I want to hear from people. And like you, people reach out to you and say, hey, can you help me with X? I do that often, and I'm happy to do it.
Thank you so much. And it's Potts with 2 T's, everyone. Potts.
Thank you.
And I wanted to read one last part of it. And this is near the end of the book. And Bill talks about live in the moment, be present, open your eyes so that you can see. I just love that as a quote. And it goes on for another few paragraphs. But to me, that about being present, even in the sticky stuff, even in the, oh no, I don't want to be here stuff, I found that the more I could convince myself to be present, the faster I got through it. And that was an amazing to me, was that it seemed like an odd, and I wasn't expecting that, to be able to, when the more present I was, the faster whatever I didn't want to be, and faster that dissipated or disappeared.
Yeah, it's well said.
We'll have to have Bill back on. I just love his spirit, and sending you all sorts of healing energy, and surrounding you with space and grace for a successful event next week.
Thank you.
We'll have Bill back on to find out the new learnings that he's had on this amazing journey of his. Everyone, and get the book, Up for the Fight. Here's a picture if you're on YouTube. Up for the Fight, How to Advocate for Yourself as You Battle Cancer from a 5-Time Survivor. And so everyone, have a great week, whatever your adventures, and join me next week for another brand new episode.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com and lifeinterruptedradio.com, plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites, and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes.